You pull up to the pump in California, and the number reads $4.89 per gallon. Not for premium, for regular unleaded. That price is a direct result of how California produces, distributes, and sells gasoline. And middle-class households are the ones absorbing the cost. When California gas prices hit $4.89 per gallon in 2024, marking a new high for the year, it reflected a fuel system designed to operate with narrow margins and limited alternatives. For a family filling up once a week with a standard 15-gallon tank, a 50-cent increase costs an extra $30 a month. A dollar more means $60. That's real money. Groceries, utilities, the difference between saving something and saving nothing. California maintains a consistent gap of $1 to $2 per gallon above the national average. If the rest of the country pays $3, California pays $5. If the nation sees $3.50, California sees $5.50. California drivers pay thousands of dollars more per year than drivers in Texas, Florida, or Ohio for the same activity. The gap exists for specific reasons. California requires a special gasoline blend, a reformulated fuel designed to meet environmental standards stricter than federal requirements. This fuel cannot be easily imported from other states. It must be produced in California or brought in from limited sources that meet the specifications. California depends almost entirely on a small number of in-state refineries to supply the entire market. When those refineries operate at full capacity, the system functions. When they don't, there's nowhere else to turn. No pipeline brings in cheaper fuel from the Gulf Coast. No easy imports arrive from neighboring states. The California market is isolated by design, and that isolation removes the safety valve that keeps prices stable elsewhere. California also imposes the highest gas taxes in the nation, the state excise tax, federal gas tax, environmental fees, and county-level sales taxes, stacked before fuel reaches the tank. These taxes and fees are predictable, they don't change week to week. What drives volatility is what happens at the refinery level. A small number of facilities produce the vast majority of the state's fuel supply. When one goes offline for scheduled maintenance, the market tightens. When two experience unplanned outages simultaneously, supply drops and prices spike. There's no reserve capacity to absorb the loss. Any disruption reaches the pump immediately. Refinery maintenance is often scheduled around the transition between summer and winter fuel blends. Summer blend gasoline, required roughly from April through October, is more expensive to produce. During these transitions, refineries shut down temporarily to retool. While one facility is offline, the others must supply the entire state. If anything goes wrong during that window, prices jump. They don't come back down quickly. California's isolated system allows prices to remain elevated even after supply issues resolve. Drivers feel the spike immediately. Relief comes slowly. The $4.89 price point represents the cumulative effect of these factors hitting simultaneously. Special fuel requirements, limited refinery capacity, geographic isolation, tax burden, seasonal demand, each factor alone raises prices. Together, they create a system where California drivers have no alternative when things go wrong. Higher fuel costs increase the price of everything that needs to be transported. Groceries cost more when delivery trucks pay more for diesel. Services cost more when contractors build fuel costs into their rates. Commuting costs rise for workers without the option to work from home. A family living 30 miles from work faces $11 per day in fuel costs for a 60-mile commute in a vehicle getting 25 miles per gallon. That's over $230 per month for one person's commute. For a household with two working adults commuting similar distances, fuel costs approach $500 monthly before accounting for any other driving. In a state where gas costs $3 per gallon, the same commute costs about $7 per day, $100 for two commuters. The California household pays $200 more per month due to the gas price differential. Over a year, that's $2,400 that cannot be saved or used for anything except keeping the car running. The cost hits hardest those who cannot afford to live close to work, who bought homes further from job centers when prices were lower, who depend on older, less fuel-efficient vehicles. A household earning $60,000 per year spending $6,000 on fuel dedicates 10% of gross income to transportation fuel. That same percentage would represent $18,000 for a household earning $180,000. The California Air Resources Board regulates the fuel standards requiring the special blend. The California Energy Commission tracks fuel prices and market conditions. California chose environmental standards that require unique fuel, and that choice created a market isolated from national supply chains. The structure delivers cleaner air and reduced emissions. It also delivers higher costs and vulnerability to supply disruptions. Both are true simultaneously. California households can't choose to buy gas from another state. They can't opt out of the special blend. They can't avoid the taxes and fees. They either pay $4.89 or they don't drive. Workers calculate whether commuting to a job still makes financial sense when fuel costs consume a larger share of wages. Families reduce trips, combine errands, cancel plans. Small businesses that depend on delivery or service calls watch margins shrink as fuel costs rise faster than they can increase prices. Wealthy households feel $4.89 as an annoyance. Middle-class households feel it as pressure, lower-income households feel it as crisis. The same price point means different things depending on income level. California's structural issues don't resolve quickly. The special fuel requirements aren't changing. Refinery capacity isn't expanding significantly. The geographic isolation remains permanent. What happened in 2024 to push prices to $4.89 per gallon can happen again because the underlying conditions haven't changed. Data from AAA, Gas Buddy, and the California Energy Commission tracks these price movements, documenting the gap between California and national averages, recording the spikes and slow declines. The numbers show a consistent pattern. California pays more, always, and sometimes pays dramatically more when the system experiences stress. The 489 milestone shows how high prices can climb within the existing structure without a major catastrophic event. No war disrupting global supplies. No massive refinery explosion. Just the normal operation of a constrained system during a period of slightly elevated demand or slightly reduced supply. California drivers know that prices can spike suddenly, stay elevated for weeks, and climb to levels that fundamentally change household budgets. They can't predict when the next spike will hit, only that it will, because the structure guarantees it. Middle-class financial planning depends on predictability. Mortgage payments don't change month to month. Rent increases happen annually, not weekly. Insurance premiums shift slowly. Fuel costs can jump 20, 30, 50 cents per gallon in days and stay there for months. That volatility makes budgeting difficult and saving nearly impossible for households operating with thin margins. Businesses factor higher operating costs into prices. Workers demand higher wages to offset commuting costs. The cost of living calculation that determines whether California remains affordable includes transportation as a major component. When fuel costs rise significantly above national norms, it contributes to the affordability crisis, pushing middle-class families to consider leaving the state. As costs rise and some residents leave, the tax base supporting infrastructure and services comes under pressure. The regulatory structure that creates high fuel costs exists alongside high housing costs, high utility costs, high taxes on income and sales. Each individual cost might be justifiable. Together, they compound into a total cost of living that challenges middle-class economic survival. California's economy is large and diverse enough to absorb these pressures without immediate collapse. But when everyday costs like fuel rise substantially faster than wages, purchasing power declines. When purchasing power declines, quality of life decreases. When quality of life decreases while costs increase, people leave if they can, and those who remain face worsening conditions. The $4.89 gas price is one data point in a larger pattern. It's a symptom of an approach to regulation and infrastructure that prioritizes certain goals while accepting certain costs. Ordinary drivers who simply need to get to work are the ones paying those costs. California prices continue to remain the highest in the continental United States. The structural factors driving elevated prices remain in place. Future spikes are not just possible, but likely given the constrained nature of the supply system. California drivers operate in a market with limited supply sources, special requirements that prevent easy imports, high taxes and fees, and vulnerability to any disruption at the refinery level. They pay significantly more than the national average, not occasionally, but consistently, year after year. When prices spike to levels like $4.89 or higher, they have no alternative and no quick relief. That's the structure. Until the structure changes, California households will continue to face fuel costs that consume a larger share of income, create greater budget volatility, and contribute to the question of whether middle-class life in California remains economically sustainable. The pump price is a measure of how policy choices, infrastructure limitations, and market isolation translate directly into financial pressure on the people who can least afford to absorb it.